Well, hi, I'm Dr. Tom Ulrich, and I like to talk about leadership in engineering. Hey, in this short video, like to answer a question that probably comes up if you watched a few videos. Who is this guy? What's my brief story? Okay, well, here it is. So I'm an engineer. I did my undergraduate and master's degree in the early 80s at UC Irvine, University of California, Irvine, in mechanical engineering. For the last 34 years, I've been working in various companies developing software for mechanical systems. So most people know me as a software guy, even though actually my first two degrees are mechanical engineering, and I've been doing a lot of life critical things. So parts of airplanes that are critical to flight, and more recently medical devices. For the last 12 years, I've been at Tandem Diabetes Care. I'm currently chief scientist there, and I've been with Tandem as it grew from a handful of us, meeting after work at Carl's Jr. to today. Our market cap is somewhere around $2 billion. At any rate, so the question then is, why do I presume to be able to make videos on leadership? And the long and the short of it is, about 5 years ago, I really got interested in this issue of how do you help people, how do you help engineers become their best? How do you lead engineers effectively? And of course, that's a big part of my job. And what I was amazed to learn is there is an entire academic field, or sometimes called leadership studies, other times called organizational leadership, that's devoted to this topic, not just for engineers, but I mean, for just working, leading in the workplace. And I was actually a little bit irritated to realize, gee, I think at that point I'd been an engineer for almost 30 years, and I'd been an engineering manager for over 20, and I was kind of annoyed that I never really heard of it until then. So what I decided to do was, first of all, I was so fascinated. I read a book by a guy named Edgar Schein, who taught at MIT for like 40 years. He was in the Sloan School of Business. And he talked about organizational culture, and it was one of the most fascinating books I ever read. And I said, okay, I need to get a PhD in this subject. And the idea of the PhD was a couple things. One was sort of a sense of unfinished business, just kind of always wanted to do it, but never really had a topic that gripped me. I was wise enough to realize if you don't have a topic that grips you, you won't finish. And this topic gripped me. And the idea then was to go and get credentials, to go and become knowledgeable of what the research is. I mean, at the end of the day, a PhD only means two things. It means, one, you're familiar with the relevant body of literature, and two, it means you know how to do research so that you can add to the body of literature. It doesn't mean I'm a great leader. It just means I'm familiar with the research that's done and I know how to add to it. At any rate, that's exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to be to master this literature so I could speak with some authority. And the tricky part then is, where in the world am I going to get this PhD? I mean, my first reaction was, we'll go back to engineering school, and I thought, well, if you really want to go study people and learn and get insight about people, probably engineering school is not the place to do it, right? So it became clear to me I need to find a program that's sort of generally located in the behavioral sciences. And kind of in my journey of just trying to sort things out, I pretty quickly figured out there is a textbook on leadership that a overwhelming majority of MBA programs and other leadership sort of things use, by a guy named Peter Northouse, who is one of the true doctors of the leadership studies, organizational leadership world. And by the way, if you haven't read that and you're interested in seriously understanding leadership, you need to. It's Leadership Theory and Practice by Peter Northouse. But I was reading his chapter on servant leadership, and this is the 7th edition of it. And he said, in the United States, Gonzaga University and Regent University are recognized as prominent leaders in this area because of the academic attention they have given to servant leadership. So my initial question was, well, I knew what Gonzaga was because I'd seen them play basketball. I actually had never heard of Regent University. So, just going online, it became clear to me Regent was real interested in working with you to figure out, how, if you're not in town, how to make this work. And what I learned was, and I think this is a pretty accurate thing, in where I live in Southern California, there's a university, Biola University, I kind of think of Regent as if you'd taken Biola and moved it to Virginia, that's Regent. Any rate, so Regent has a program in leadership, and they were doing exactly what I wanted to do, and so that's where I spent a little over 4 years earning a PhD. And again, the bottom line is, I am a practitioner. I am an engineer. I've been an engineer for a long time, but now I'm also have the academic credentials, so I can speak from two angles, from the practitioner as well as the academician. Academician. Well, I haven't learned how to speak yet. I mean, I'm an engineer, so that's to be expected. I can speak as an academic. Yeah, I really can speak English. Any rate, so why do we care? Why would we care what an academic says? And it boils down to this simple idea: is what the researchers do, the careful academics, is they take time isolating variables. And so what you have is you have practitioners who very often have all these theories and their 12 steps and all these things, but what they can do is a couple things. One is they failed to identify what the real variable was. They were aware that they were doing one thing, where in reality it was something they weren't even aware of that caused their success. The other more frightening thing is this idea that sometimes you're successful as a leader in spite of what you're doing rather than because of what you're doing. And so, you have a lot of really crazy theories. Like there's one theory I'll address in another video, but it basically goes like this, and it's by a very famous practitioner, a very successful guy. His theory is you should fire 10% of your staff every year. And we'll go into that in detail in another video. That is nonsense and really problematic, both from a theory perspective, but also from a moral perspective. But, there's a case where he had phenomenal success, not because of that practice, but in spite of that practice. And the thing is, when he talks about, leadership and things like that, he says that's the reason, and simply put, is he didn't carefully isolate his variables. The other issue is generalizability. Okay, so one person does one thing in one context and it works. That does not in any way imply it'll work in a different context by a different person. So the researchers, the academics, they spend their time answering questions to get to the bottom of, what do we really know, and let's differentiate between scientifically discovered facts and basically philosophies of leadership. Now, it's not to say that the practitioners can't be helpful. A lot of them are really helpful, but you have to understand that a lot of the practitioners, a lot of what they say just ain't so. You'll see practitioners who have doctorates, but they don't have doctorates in organizational leadership or sort of related fields, psychology or sociology or whatnot. And there's some other unrelated degree, and they're walking around like experts, and they're just making stuff up that just isn't reliable and shouldn't be taken serious. So the bottom line is, what I'm trying to do is basically infuse the academic research into the world of engineering. Very little of it is aimed at engineers. Most of it's aimed at, most of it's aimed at educators and nurses, but, very little is on engineering specific, but I'm trying to sort of bring that in. Any rate, in the process, you got to have like a little catchy thing, right? So I'm referring to myself as the engineering leadership guy. It's certainly not. I'm not so presumptuous as to think I'm the only one who can speak on the topic, but I do think it's a catchy little thing. And I really am trying to come at it as not only as a successful practitioner, but also an academic with real credentials. So that's the story on the engineering leadership guy. I'm Dr. Tom Ulrich, and I like talking about leadership and engineering. You can find my videos, I think, on YouTube. You can, if you just search on Dr. Tom Ulrich, although then you have to remember how to spell Ulrich, which, is a problem. You can search on the engineering leadership guy. That works. Or you can go to my website, tomulrichconsulting.com, and I've got links to my videos and some of my papers I've done and so on. Anyway, thanks for your time. We'll talk to you later.